Welcome back to Just the Truth, where I'm talking with Jennifer Lahl, who's the director, writer, and producer of the brand new documentary that you absolutely need to see called Transmission: What's the Rush to Reassign Gender? And Jennifer, we were talking before the break about this one pediatrician that you did interview that actually is supportive of gender affirmation of children and the transition process. What are the arguments from, I can't imagine a doctor actually affirming this and thinking that it's ethical.
Yeah, well, one of the arguments is that sex is a spectrum. We no longer acknowledge that we're born male or female, which is, it's kind of absurd that in the 21st century we actually are saying things like that,
right.
That there's not two sexes. Realizing that there are some children, again, back to my pediatric nursing, that are born with, some anomalies, but those are rare. There's male and there's female. So there's actually a movement in medicine, if you will, and in academia to just deny biological reality, and that there's a spectrum, and there's this fluidity, and so you can be in and out, you can be non-binary, you can be agender, you can be on this sort of spectrum, if you will, and that's one of the arguments. And there's also what I found was frustrating in doing my research and my interviews. There's this notion that there's nothing wrong with these children. This is part of a diversity, if you will, but then the questions that I would ask, well, if there's nothing wrong, then why do they need a treatment?
Right.
If there's nothing wrong, if there's no disease, why do they need a therapy or plan or to help them on a journey to
That's a great point.
Because if it's just a diverse, we just see a diverse creature in nature, we just leave it alone. And so there's this sort of that disconnect between just reality, biological reality, and that you can't, move in and out. And you're not born in the wrong body. And there's people that do say they've been born in the wrong body, and the way to treat them is to help them create a new body, which is just a masquerade.
Right, and this is something even very prominent trans people, like for example Caitlyn Jenner, would say that as well. Say, well, I was born in the wrong body, and yet you don't see all of these doctors who are affirming this. You don't see them saying anything from a science factual basis. It's all just philosophical, because all of these arguments like, oh, there's this gender spectrum, oh, there's this, there's that isn't affirming biological reality. And they're supposedly the ones that say, trust the science, trust the biology. And so it, of course, it goes along with the Christian worldview that God made us male and female. It says that right in Genesis 1:27, he made them male and female. But it's a weird disconnect that somehow now doctors and the medical profession is getting more into this sort of postmodern philosophy instead of staying grounded in science. And so do you think that there is really more of just a financial component? Because you were talking about your earlier documentaries about egg harvesting and all these things, and this is a whole new, trans people are a whole new category of customers for Big Pharma.
It's a whole new, industry, if you will, a new field of medicine. One of the doctors that we interview says, if you medicalize a young little boy or a young little girl and put them on cross-sex hormones, you have a patient for life. Caitlyn Jenner, I live in California, so, Caitlyn Jenner is all over our news out there on a daily basis. Caitlyn Jenner will, for the rest of his life, as long as he chooses to masquerade, and I say he because he's a he,
because he's a he,
he will have to take estrogen. He will have to kind of keep. So you do medicalize somebody for life, and that is a new market share. One of the detransitioners that we interviewed, he was sent through his employee benefits, which provided transition surgery, to see a doctor down at Stanford. He felt immediately upsold on what Hachi wanted was just to have his testicles removed, but this doctor had never performed the surgery. He was just getting into it. He wanted to sort of blaze the trail and sort of make his mark in this new field of medicine, and so he was offering him to do much more reconstructive surgery to turn him into a physical female. But again, Hachi is still a man.
Right.
No matter what he puts in his body or what he has surgically removed or surgically added on, if there's a crime scene and his blood is left at the crime scene, they will be looking for a man, not somebody who identifies as a woman or identifies as a man.
Yeah, and that's a good point, and I like your characterization there of it's just costuming and it's a masquerade, because it doesn't actually match reality. And so for these types of of medical journals and the ethics behind this. I mean, how is this getting into modern medicine where this is actually considered ethical for doctors? I mean, is there incentives that you found that, doctors want to say this? Because the Hippocratic Oath is first do no harm. And it seems like there is so much harm from the testimonies from the people who've detransitioned, from even just what you were describing of, harvesting eggs of children in case they want to reproduce later. I mean, that's just disgusting, and it should shock the conscience.
I know. Well, the problem is that most doctors today, most physicians, I still believe really got into practicing medicine to do good and to help people cure disease, alleviate suffering, all that. But they're busy. They can't stay on top of the latest, research every single minute of the day if they're running a busy practice. Maybe if they're in academic medicine, academia, then they can be, have their nose in all the latest research. But most physicians, that's not the case. And what's happened is there are professional societies like the Pediatric Endocrine Society, like the American Academy of Pediatrics. They have said this is the new treatment of choice, gender affirmation. And there is a handful of those people that speak for the whole entire profession then. And so the busy doctor who thinks he's doing well and right by his patients says, well, what does my professional body, my professional association say? I will follow them because, I will just trust them to know what perhaps I don't know, which is really unfortunate. And there is this notion of, one reality since the film has been out, it's been viewed by, tens of thousands of people, and we're thrilled by that. But our social media gurus are telling us what's interesting is people aren't liking it and sharing it because we don't want to out ourselves. There's this culture of, you will lose your job, your children will be ostracized, the school will know that you're a transphobic family because you liked or shared a film that's asking what's the rush to doing this for children. And so that trickles down to physicians too. They're human.
Right.
That they don't want to be seen as the physician. And that's why the physicians that we did interview on camera, who are absolutely 100% lockstep, we have no business doing this to children, are just brave and courageous. And I hope they will give others that kind of, courage is contagious.
It is. And I hope that more people, and as they're watching this show, as they continue to see this on other interviews and social media, that people will have the courage to share this and to stand for the truth, because it's so obvious that not only is this the truth, but also it's amazing in our culture today that we can't even ask the question. I mean, what's the rush to gender reassignment? I mean, that's not even taking a position. That's just asking a question. But we saw even in the aftermath of the pandemic and how many doctors were maligned as conspiracy theorists just for questioning things about the vaccine or COVID treatment. And so it seems like in all categories, but particularly in quote unquote science, that we can't even ask questions anymore. And isn't that really the scientific method, is to ask questions?
It is. It's crazy. And I point back to, clinical trial. If you were going to develop a new drug therapy and that you were going to look at curing prostate cancer, now would you recruit a bunch of women who are posing as trans men to be subjects in your clinical trial? These are women who don't have a prostate gland.
Right.
But then if you didn't, you would be, exploiting them, or, and you kind of go,
giving them something they don't need.
Yeah. Because we want to be politically correct. And if you identify as a man, then you can be part of a clinical trial. But that gets back to science. If you're trying to cure a disease that only men get, you're going to want to test your treatment on biological men.
Right.
Not women who are pretending to be men or are identifying as men. It's just scientifically absurd. And your data would be worthless.
Right. And that goes to not only the harm in the culture of this sort of compulsory and shaming of people, calling people transphobic who actually want to love the truth and to help people, and doctors who may say, this isn't really the best for my patient and I don't want to have to affirm this, but I'm going to be ostracized if not. But what are some of the other harms to people that you've seen with the testimonies of the people who have transitioned out and said, wait a second, that was a really bad decision? Yeah,
well, it depends, again, if it's a male to female versus female to male transition. But, if you can just imagine years and years and years of putting the wrong hormones in your body. I live in California. We don't even want hormones in our food, let alone you're taking a biological female and you're putting her on testosterone at doses that her body was never ever designed to have in it, and for years and years and years. And the same is reversed for men, and especially if they start going down the surgical route. I mean, there is regret, if you're a woman who's decided to have a mastectomy, elective, and to have your uterus and your ovaries removed and try to surgically change your body, those are really, really rough surgeries. I don't want to get into the gory details because it's pretty
gory.
It's
literally.
gory.
I mean,
it doesn't look like modern medicine.
Yeah. This looks like literally body mutilation because that's what it is.
And you see the effects on men in their hearts and women in their bones and their brains. I mean, this bombardment of wrong sex hormones at such high doses to try to mimic, make your body look like something it was never created or designed to be. And again, this notion that we can ignore science and biological reality and fashion you into the opposite sex is just absurd.
Yeah, and to do that just to affirm a feeling as if that is somehow to be cherished or believed more than the truth of science, the truth of biology, instead of giving these kids, first, not even exposing them to this. I mean, I don't ever remember as a child ever somebody saying, you might be a boy, actually. It was just obvious, But to create this whole class of new patients and to say that this is how we're going to treat this. First, we're going to expose them, market this, and then take it on as consumers. I mean, that has so many ethical problems and there's so much harm here. And we'll be right back to talk more with Jennifer Lahl, but go and share this video. It's on YouTube and it's preview, and we'll be right back.